A snowstorm halts all flights at a quiet regional airport, forcing Rebecca Wahlberg and her young son to spend the night on a cold, crowded terminal bench. She offers her coat to a feverish stranger, unaware that the woman is actually a federal agent sent to investigate her. As hours pass and tension rises, what begins as a simple act of kindness unfolds into something far more complex. Layers of grief, guilt, and suspicion collide under flickering airport lights. When duty meets doubt and empathy challenges everything one woman thought she knew, the line between suspect and protector begins to blur. How much can you trust your instincts when the person you're watching doesn't match the story you were told? Rebecca Wahlberg hated asking for help. It sat bitter in her chest, like old tea gone cold. She'd learned a long time ago that the world didn't offer anything for free, and when it did, it usually came with strings too tangled to see right away. So when she gave help, she expected nothing in return. That's why she didn't hesitate when she saw the woman sitting across from her, shivering, lips pale, head drooping like it weighed too much for her neck. She didn't look like someone used to being vulnerable. Her blazer was thin, sharp lines pressed into the sleeves, like it had only just come off a dry cleaner's hanger. But her eyes, they weren't sharp. They were lost. And for reasons Rebecca couldn't explain, that hit her somewhere deep. Without a word, Rebecca stood, her own coat folded over her arm like an offering. She didn't make a show of it, just stepped across the space between the rows of plastic airport chairs and held it out. "Here," she said quietly, "take this." The woman blinked. Up close, Rebecca could see how flushed her cheeks were, not from embarrassment, fever. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached out. "Oh, I'm fine," she muttered, voice hoarse. But she took the coat anyway. Rebecca gave her a look, not stern, just matter-of-fact. "You're clearly not—" Across the aisle, Micah shifted in his sleep, the side of his head pressed into Rebecca's duffel bag like it was a pillow. One of his sneakers had slipped off. His socks didn't match, one gray, one bright green. Rebecca returned to him, lifting the corner of a threadbare blanket and tucking it tighter around his shoulders. She brushed the hair from his forehead gently, fingers lingering. No one would have guessed he wasn't hers by blood, not by the way she looked at him. "You two traveling home?" the woman asked after a beat, voice quieter now. Rebecca didn't answer at first. She just sat, her arms wrapped around herself now that her coat was gone, trying to keep the warmth in. Her eyes flicked over to the woman, studying her for a moment. "Yeah, delays kept us stuck here. He's got school Monday, and I've got, stuff to get back to." The woman nodded, her eyelids fluttering, but she didn't drop the conversation. "I'm Harper, by the way." Rebecca didn't smile, but she nodded. Rebecca. There was a long pause. Somewhere overhead an intercom crackled, but the announcement was too garbled to make out. All around them people were curled up on coats, bags, or chairs, trying to make peace with a night spent sleeping upright. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. The vending machine in the corner clicked every few minutes, though no one touched it. Harper coughed softly, one hand pressed to her ribs. "You from around here?" Rebecca gave a small shake of her head. "No, grew up in Detroit, moved west when I was 22. You?" "D.C.," Harper said. Her eyes drifted shut again. "Work takes me all over. Too much travel." Rebecca didn't ask what she did. People who mentioned travel like that always wanted you to ask, and Rebecca had learned to spot bait when she saw it. Instead, she glanced down at Micah. His breathing had evened out. His fingers clutched the tail of a worn plush toy, a lion with one eye missing and a tail sewn back on by uneven thread. He was getting too old for it, but he didn't care. Rebecca never took it from him. Harper opened her eyes again, slowly. "He's a good sleeper." "Only when he knows I'm nearby," Rebecca said, almost reflexively. The agent didn't say anything to that. From Harper's seat she could see most of the terminal. Families sprawled across rows of seats, coats used as pillows. A college kid was charging his phone by the window, flicking through his screen with a blank expression. A woman paced near the bathroom entrance, whispering harshly into her phone. Security was light tonight, just one sleepy guard posted by the front desk. Rebecca followed Harper's gaze. "You got someone waiting for you on the other end?" "No." The word came too fast. Then Harper caught herself. "I mean, not really. Just work." Rebecca arched an eyebrow, but didn't push. She'd met that tone before. Women who wore detachment like armor, who swore they were fine walking through the world alone. Rebecca knew better. Alone wasn't strength. Alone was survival. Harper shifted in the seat, her shoulders curling inward. She rubbed her temples, then let her head rest against the wall behind her. "You should rest," Rebecca said. "I can't." "You might not?" There was a pause, then a tired shrug. "Job. Head doesn't shut off that easy." Rebecca understood that too well. She'd spent too many nights listening for sounds in the dark. Not from fear, just from the memories that clung to her like perfume, long after a funeral. She didn't know why she spoke next. Maybe it was Harper's vulnerability, maybe it was the quiet. But the words came out, slow. "Micah's not my son." Harper turned slightly toward her. "His dad, Deshaun. He was my best friend. We grew up together, shared a lot of hard years. He died 5 years ago in a wreck. I was the only one Micah had left." "I'm sorry," Harper said softly. Rebecca nodded, not looking for sympathy. "I made a promise at the funeral, in front of everybody, that I'd raise Micah like he was my own, and I have." She paused. "Didn't think I'd be good at it. Still don't, most days. But he's okay." Harper watched the way Rebecca's eyes flickered when she said that. Not pride. Something quieter. Something like guilt. "What about you?" Rebecca asked, surprising Harper. "Someone who waits up? Misses you when you're gone?" Harper hesitated, then lied. "No, no one." Rebecca gave a small nod, then leaned her head back and closed her eyes. What Harper didn't say was that for the past 6 months, she'd read every email Rebecca sent from her work computer. She'd sat in briefing rooms while analysts pored over documents, financial logs, signatures. She'd listened to higher-ups speculate about money trails and offshore accounts and silent partners. On paper, Rebecca Wahlberg was clean, too perfect. The kind of profile that set off alarm. And yet, watching her now, Harper felt something she hadn't prepared for. Doubt. The way she tucked the blanket around Micah without thinking. The softness in her voice when she spoke. The quiet sadness behind her eyes. None of it matched the profile. Harper closed her eyes too, letting the fever drift in and pull at her thoughts, just for a moment. She'd check her intel again in the morning, go over every file. But as the terminal lights dimmed slightly for the night and the sound of distant snowplows echoed through the glass, a question began to form in the back of her mind. What if they were wrong about Rebecca Wahlberg? And what if she wasn't the only one? Harper Collins couldn't feel her hands, not in a dramatic way, just a slow, creeping numbness that had started at her fingertips and was now curling toward her wrists. The coat Rebecca had given her helped a little, but it didn't change the fact that her body was shutting down in slow motion, piece by piece, while her mind kept trying to stay sharp. That was the job. Stay sharp. Stay 2 steps ahead. Trust the file, not your gut. But her gut was loud tonight. Rebecca Wahlberg wasn't supposed to be kind. That wasn't in the file. She wasn't supposed to look tired but controlled, or speak with warmth, or wrap a threadbare blanket around a boy who clutched a busted stuffed lion like it was the only thing tethering him to peace. She wasn't supposed to say she made a promise to raise someone else's child, not without bitterness or pity in her voice. Harper's eyes were open now, barely. Her breath came in small, shallow draws. Her throat ached. She didn't like being the vulnerable one. Vulnerable people made mistakes. She shifted slightly in the chair, but her legs were heavy. She could feel sweat beading along her hairline, though the terminal's heat was barely enough to fight the drafts snaking in from the revolving doors. Somewhere to her left, a janitor shuffled by with a mop and bucket. The water sloshed. Rebecca hadn't moved in a while. She was still seated, legs crossed, arms folded, eyes closed. Not asleep, Harper could tell. The kind of stillness born from experience. Not calm, but watchfulness. The kind of stillness Harper had been trained to mimic. Funny how it came naturally to some people. She hated how hard it was to reconcile the file with the woman in front of her. Rebecca Wahlberg, 34, works as a procurement coordinator for Evergreen Health Systems, mid-level management, clean record. Widowed, not legally, but emotionally. Guardian of Deshaun Price's son, Micah. Primary suspect in the disappearance of over $2 million in misallocated research funding through Blue Hawk Biotech, a subsidiary of Evergreen. Several wire transfers untraceable. Financial behavior too cautious to be coincidence. The problem wasn't what was in the report. It was what wasn't. There was no arrogance, no indulgence, no designer bags or sudden car upgrades. Her apartment rent was the same. Her spending hadn't changed in 4 years. And yet the money had gone missing, and all signs pointed back to someone with her clearance level, which made her either the most disciplined embezzler Harper had ever investigated, or someone being used. Harper sat up a little straighter. She had to stay focused, think critically. She tried to imagine Rebecca behind a desk, forging invoices, signing off on fake vendor forms, authorizing payments to ghost companies. Maybe she'd learned to hide it. Maybe this whole single mom caretaker act was just that, an act. But something about the boy made it harder to believe. Micah stirred then, a little moan slipping from his lips. His legs twitched. Rebecca was by his side in seconds, kneeling to brush a hand over his forehead. Her voice was soft, barely audible. "Shh. It's okay. I'm here." Harper turned her face slightly, pretending not to watch. But she was watching. And listening. "He gets night terrors sometimes," Rebecca said over her shoulder, not turning around. "Used to scream so loud the neighbors thought I was hurting him. They came banging on the door once." She tucked the lion back under Micah's arm. "He doesn't remember in the morning." Harper swallowed. Her voice cracked when she asked, "Does he know about his father?" "Some," Rebecca said. "Enough." Micah quieted again, his breathing steady. Rebecca stood and walked back to her seat, brushing invisible dust from her jeans. She looked over at Harper, who was still pale, still visibly unwell. "You should lie down. You look worse." Harper offered a weak smile. "Thanks." Rebecca hesitated, then dug into her bag and pulled out a small folded blanket. Thin, like a travel throw, but clean. She walked over and handed it to Harper. No drama, no commentary. Harper took it, surprised by how grateful she felt for the warmth. "You always carry stuff like this?" Rebecca shrugged. "When you take care of kids, you start packing like a nurse. Or a survivalist." That was the first moment Harper felt something break inside her. Not in a catastrophic way, but like a crack forming down the middle of a theory. The neat profile she'd built didn't fit anymore. And if the profile didn't fit, maybe the assignment didn't either. As they traveled, she shifted the blanket over her shoulders, then took a quiet breath and tried to stay clinical. "You said Micah's not your son," Harper said, her voice low. "No. His mom left when he was 2. Deshaun raised him alone. He was a good dad. Not perfect, but good." "How'd he die?" "Texting and driving," Rebecca said flatly. "Ironic, he used to lecture me about it. One night, coming back from a side gig, he did some freelance coding. His car flipped off an underpass. A pause. They found the phone lit up in the passenger seat, open to a message he never sent. Harper watched the way Rebecca's jaw clenched. It was subtle, controlled. What about Micah's mom? No clue. Haven't heard from her since the funeral. I don't chase ghosts. It was then that something else clicked for Harper. The transfers, the siphoned money, had started after Deshawn's death, not before, as if whoever was behind it knew his login credentials or had access to systems he'd built. That meant Rebecca wasn't the origin. But if she'd been looped in after and hadn't noticed, or worse, had noticed and stayed silent, Harper's head throbbed. She leaned back again. "You okay?" Rebecca asked, eyeing her. "Olive, you don't look like it." Rebecca wasn't being cruel, just blunt. Harper smiled faintly. "What do you do, Rebecca, for work?" The answer came with no hesitation. Procurement coordinator for a healthcare system. Harper nodded slowly. "Is that stressful?" Rebecca gave a dry laugh. "Is managing multiple department supply chains for a mid-size hospital stressful? Yeah, especially when budgets are frozen and everyone wants what they can't afford. I bet you're good at it." Rebecca's expression softened for the first time. "I try." "Ever make mistakes?" "Sure. Who doesn't?" Harper let the silence sit for a while. Then she said, "I used to think people were either good or bad, binary." Rebecca snorted. "That sounds like someone who hasn't lived much." "Yeah," Harper whispered. "It does." Across the terminal, the janitor passed by again, this time without looking at them. An automated message played over the speakers, announcing another round of flight delays. No one even reacted anymore. Rebecca leaned back again, one hand resting lightly on her duffel bag, eyes tracking the soft rise and fall of Micah's chest. There was a calmness in her now that Harper couldn't fake, couldn't file, couldn't ignore. The kind of calm you earn after surviving something. And Harper, for the first time in 6 months, didn't feel certain about anything anymore. Not about Rebecca, not about the case, and definitely not about herself. She let her eyes close again, letting the fever drag her under. And in the quiet, something whispered through her haze like a warning wrapped in doubt. What if this woman didn't just deserve mercy? What if she'd never needed suspicion in the first place? Micah was the first to stir. His lashes fluttered, as if wrestling with the pull of a dream, his head still nestled against the faded duffel bag Rebecca used as both pillow and fortress. A sleepy grunt slipped from his lips, and his fingers gripped tighter to the stuffed lion, its one eye catching the sterile glow of the terminal lights. Rebecca barely moved. She knew the difference between a child waking and a child needing her. Micah didn't need her. Not yet. But he would soon. She glanced at the clock above the closed Starbucks. 4:30. 8 a.m. and the storm outside still raged, smearing frost across the windows like cold hands pressed against the glass. No new announcements. No signs of relief. Across from her, Harper hadn't moved in a while. Her face had paled even further, a sheen of sweat covering her brow. Her jaw clenched now and then like she was grinding her teeth through a bad dream. Rebecca had seen that look before. People riding out fevers with sheer willpower because they were too proud or too scared to admit they couldn't outrun it. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Hey, Harper." No answer. She reached out, hesitating for just a second before pressing 2 fingers lightly to Harper's wrist. Her pulse was fast, too fast. Rebecca's breath tightened. She glanced around the terminal, still barely staffed, still no one awake enough to notice. "Micah," she whispered. The boy sat up, rubbing sleep from his eyes, blinking at her. "Yeah? I need to get some water and maybe a hot drink for her." She nodded toward Harper. "Stay here. Watch our bags. Keep your line close." Micah gave a sleepy nod, the lion tucked tighter under his arm. Rebecca stood and walked quietly toward the vending machines and the 24-hour cafe stand that looked open in name only. The lone employee behind the counter looked up with bloodshot eyes, then down again without asking if she needed help. She poured hot water from the dispenser into a cardboard cup and tore open 2 honey packets. It wasn't tea, but it would soothe the throat. Maybe, if Harper could even hold it down. When she got back, Harper was half awake, blinking blearily at her surroundings like she wasn't sure where she was. Rebecca crouched beside her. "You need to drink something," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. Harper looked at the cup, then at Rebecca. Her eyes were too glassy to show recognition at first. Then something clicked behind them. "I'm fine. The fly stopped working hours ago." Harper coughed, a harsh, rattling sound that did more to confirm Rebecca's instincts than any test could. Rebecca pressed the cup into her hand. "I don't know who you work for or where you're going, but if you drop here, it won't matter." Harper accepted the cup with shaking fingers, taking a small sip. Her voice rasped when she finally spoke. "You always this direct?" Rebecca shrugged. "I was a night shift CNA for 8 years. People lie about how sick they are. You learn to cut through it." Harper let the warmth sit in her palms, breathing in the steam. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. Micah watched the exchange from his seat, blinking slow and curious. Then, as if deciding something, he stood and walked over to Harper. He held out the lion. Harper blinked at it. "What's this?" "It helps," Micah said, "when I feel sick or scared." Harper hesitated. "I can't take your—" "It's okay," Micah interrupted. "He likes new people." Rebecca's mouth twitched. "His name's Leroy, and you'd better give him back or bedtime won't be pretty." Harper looked at the scruffy toy for a long second, then took it gently and set it in her lap. Rebecca settled back in her chair, pulling Micah close, his head resting against her side now. "You two always travel alone?" Harper asked after a while, her voice steadier. Rebecca exhaled through her nose. "Usually. It's cheaper, easier in some ways. No one to negotiate with, no one to disappoint." She paused. "But it's lonely, too, sometimes." Harper didn't respond right away. Then she said, "My job doesn't leave much room for company or being known." Rebecca's eyes didn't leave her. "What do you do? Really?" There it was. Harper studied her for a beat. The usual lies were ready. Consultant, contractor, analyst. But Rebecca's gaze wasn't one that would believe them, not anymore. "I work in oversight," Harper said finally. "Government contracts, fraud detection." Rebecca didn't flinch. "So you watch people?" "Sometimes. Like me?" That made Harper pause. Her lips parted slightly, then shut again. Rebecca didn't push. She just said, "You don't look like someone who's here by accident." "I wasn't," Harper admitted. Micah looked between them, brow furrowed. Harper shifted, cleared her throat, and added, "But I didn't expect you to be like this." "Like what?" "Not what they said you'd be." Rebecca gave a small, sad smile. "That's the thing about stories. Depends who's telling them." She leaned back again, closing her eyes. "I made mistakes, but I never took what wasn't mine." Harper looked at her, the certainty in her voice, the way her body didn't stiffen like someone performing innocence, no denial, just the weight of truth sitting between them. "What happened?" Harper asked, almost whispering. Rebecca opened her eyes. "After Deshawn died, people came knocking. Companies he did side work for, contracts I didn't understand, systems he never told me about. I had access, but I didn't know it meant something. I thought it was just Cleanup. Legacy stuff. She sighed. I filed what they asked, transferred what I thought were residual balances. Then they started asking for more, and when I pushed back, they vanished. But the trail stayed. You didn't report it? I didn't know how, or who to trust. Who listens to a single black woman with a kid and no law degree? Harper sat with that, chewed on it. It tasted bitter and familiar. Systems built to protect but only certain people. Micah rested his hand on Rebecca's knee. She placed her hand over his gently. I've been waiting, Rebecca said, for someone to knock on my door. But no one ever did. Harper looked away. Rebecca's voice softened. Until now, I guess. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't heavy, just full. Like the space after a storm when nothing has dried yet, but the sky's already clear. Harper finally said, You know what I hate most about my job? Rebecca tilted her head. Sometimes the truth feels like a betrayal. To the people who sent me. And to the ones I find. Rebecca gave her a long look. Then maybe it's not truth you're delivering. Maybe it's just the wrong mission. Harper didn't reply. The speaker system chimed above. A scratchy voice announced the first tentative flights being rechecked for departure windows. People around them began to stir, stretching, repacking. Hope was returning in small movements. Micah stood and zipped his bag without needing to be told. Rebecca followed his lead. Harper tried to do the same, but her legs shook. Rebecca caught her elbow. You'll need help, she said, without judgment. I've got it, Harper tried, then wobbled again. Right. Rebecca looped Harper's arm around her shoulder, steadying her. As they began to move toward the gate information desk together, Harper glanced sideways. You think Leroy's gonna forgive me for stealing his spot? Rebecca smirked. Depends. You planning on giving him back? Eventually. Micah snorted behind them. And for the first time all night, Harper smiled too. Harper could feel herself slipping. The fever wasn't gone, just quiet for now. Like a wave, waiting just offshore. She walked beside Rebecca, every step steadied by the woman she'd spent the past 6 months watching, dissecting, doubting. Nothing about this moment matched her training. She wasn't supposed to feel a debt to the person under surveillance. She wasn't supposed to feel anything. Micah walked a few steps ahead, Leroy the lion tucked under his arm again, like the night hadn't exposed all their hidden corners. Rebecca guided them toward the gate agent's desk. The crowd in the terminal had begun to stir fully now. More employees in uniform appeared. Passengers stood, stretching sore limbs. Cell phones lit up the room like fireflies. Outside, snow plows carved paths through the tarmac, engines howling faintly through the thick airport glass. Gate B3 just reopened, a voice called over the intercom. Final boarding group for Flight 728 to Minneapolis, please proceed now. Not their flight, not their city. Harper's legs wobbled again. Rebecca reached instinctively, looping an arm under hers to hold her steady. You're not going to make it on a plane like this, she muttered. I'm fine. You're lying. I'm used to it. Rebecca didn't smile. Not a point of pride. They reached the help desk. A woman in her late 50s stood behind the counter, jaw tight, eyes scanning the chaos unfolding beyond the kiosks. Rebecca stepped forward. Excuse me, do you know if the flight to Oakland is still scheduled? The woman checked her monitor, fingers moving faster than her expression. Still grounded. They might clear it later this morning, but nothing for at least another 2 hours. Rebecca sighed. Harper leaned harder into her side. And, the woman added, glancing at Harper, if she's that sick, they might not let her board anyway. Rebecca blinked. Excuse me? Flight crews can deny entry if they think someone's medically unfit. She looks like she needs a hospital, not a boarding pass. Harper bristled. I'm fine. But her body betrayed her. She swayed and her lips parted with a sharp inhale, almost as if her chest forgot how to pull air for a second. The desk agent folded her arms. "You need medical attention." "She'll be fine," Rebecca said, more firmly this time. "We'll just wait it out. I'm going to have to notify security if she collapses. Airport protocol." Rebecca's voice went low, not loud, not angry, but it had an edge that Harper had only heard once before, from someone standing between danger and something they loved. "Let me ask you something," she said. "If she were a man in a business suit, would you call security? Or would you offer to page a medic quietly so he didn't get flagged?" The agent's jaw tightened. "I don't write the rules." "No, but you pick how you enforce them." "No, but you pick how you enforce them." People were beginning to look, not everyone, but enough. Harper gripped the counter. "It's fine. She's just trying to help." "She's not wrong," Micah said, suddenly, voice small but sure. "You're being weird about it." The agent blinked, thrown, then softened. "Look, I'll get you a wheelchair. That's all I can do right now." Rebecca nodded, jaw clenched. 10 minutes later, Harper sat hunched in the wheelchair, a blanket draped over her lap. Micah crouched beside her, fiddling with a packet of peanut butter crackers he'd found in Rebecca's bag. Rebecca stood behind the chair, her arms crossed, still bristling. "You didn't need to go toe-to-toe with her," Harper said. "Yes, I did." Harper turned, eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because I'm tired of people deciding who's worthy of patience based on how clean they look." She paused. "And because I know what it's like to have someone doubt you when you're too sick to fight back." Harper looked away, throat thick. Micah offered the crackers to her. "Want one?" She smiled faintly. "Thanks, kid. Maybe later." Rebecca sat beside her now, one hand wrapped around a paper coffee cup. "I read your kind before," she said. "Not personally, but I've had investigators circle my life like buzzards before something bad happened. Once, when I was 22, a mistake on my taxes got me flagged. They thought I was laundering money through a church I used to donate to. Took months to clear it up. Lost my job while I waited." Harper didn't speak. Rebecca took a sip. "You were looking at me like that." "I wasn't sure what to believe," Harper admitted. "Still not." Harper's mouth opened, then closed. Rebecca nodded slowly. "Fair enough." Then, from over the intercom, the words, "Security to Terminal B. Report of suspicious passenger activity. Copy B terminal. Possible welfare check." All three froze. Harper's spine stiffened. Rebecca's voice dropped. "That about you?" Harper whispered. "Could be someone else." But it wasn't. Within minutes, 2 TSA agents appeared in yellow jackets, flanked by a tall man in a plain black blazer, clearly someone above rank. Harper lowered her head. Rebecca stepped in front of her before they could speak. "Is there a problem?" "We received a report," the taller man said. "Someone in this area might be in medical distress, just a routine check." Micah stood, putting himself between Harper and the agents. He didn't say anything. He just looked at them, quiet and unafraid. The man raised a brow. "Ma'am?" "Can we speak with your friend?" "She can speak for herself," Rebecca said, "if she chooses to." Harper looked up slowly. Her voice was gravel but steady. "I'm fine. I'm recovering from the flu. I didn't cause any issues. I've stayed seated. I haven't asked for anything." The man studied her. Then his eyes slid to Rebecca. "You're traveling with her?" "Yes." "You two related?" "No." "Then why are you—" "Because someone has to stand beside her." The man didn't respond. He turned to one of the TSA officers and whispered something. They nodded and backed off. No apology, just retreat. When they were gone, Rebecca exhaled. So did Harper. Micah climbed into the seat beside them again, as if he'd never moved. Harper wiped her face with the sleeve of her coat. "You didn't have to do that." Rebecca looked at her. "Sure, I did. Because you were alone, and I've had enough of watching people stay silent while someone gets picked apart just for being tired." Harper swallowed. Rebecca added, "Besides, if you really were here to take me down, I'd want you strong enough to do it standing up, not in a chair with strangers judging you." Harper blinked. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. "Not much. Just a breath of it. Perhaps." Oddly generous. "It's not generosity, it's survival, and maybe some hope." Harper tilted her head. "Hope?" Rebecca smiled without showing her teeth. "That one day someone might stand in front of me too." She looked toward the gates, the first traces of morning sunlight finally edging into the glass. Planes were moving again, engines humming, people lining up, the world beginning to turn back on. Rebecca reached into her bag and pulled out a small wrapped protein bar. She handed it to Harper. "Eat. You'll need your strength." Harper took it. The silence returned, but it was different now, calmer. And somewhere deep inside her, Harper started wondering not if Rebecca was guilty, but who might have been hiding behind her all along. Rebecca barely spoke as the boarding screens flickered green. Micah leaned against her side, chewing the edge of a granola bar, too tired to talk, too smart to ask questions she wouldn't answer. The buzz of the terminal had risen, morning shifting the energy in the building, passengers awake and impatient, announcements crisp, TSA patrols moving more alertly than they had at 2 a.m. The storm outside had lost its roar, but the damage was done. No flight in or out without delay, and even those would require a little luck and the right kind of miracle. Harper sat nearby, knees pulled close, hands clasped tightly in her lap. She looked steadier than earlier. Her color had improved, and the fever seemed to have broken, but the exhaustion in her eyes ran deeper. Not just the kind brought on by illness. It was the kind that came from too many months spent believing in the wrong people. "Something's bothering you," Rebecca said quietly, watching Harper without turning toward her. Harper didn't answer right away. She glanced at Micah, then looked down at her hands. "They're expecting me to send in a preliminary recommendation by noon," she said finally. Rebecca didn't flinch. "About me?" Harper nodded once. "Technically, I already have most of the file written. They think I've made up my mind." "Have you?" Harper hesitated. "I thought I had." Rebecca gave a small shrug. "Well, if you need a villain to close the story, I guess I'm convenient." "That's not what I said." Rebecca gave her a long look. "It doesn't need to be said. You're not here because you missed your connection. You're here because someone decided a black woman in a middle management job couldn't possibly be clean if money went missing." Harper opened her mouth to speak, but Rebecca continued before she could. "And you know what? I get it. You were doing your job. You had a trail. You followed it. But now you're sitting here and it's not lining up. Because I'm not stealing anything. I'm not hiding anything. I'm just trying to keep a promise to a dead friend and raise a kid who still has nightmares 3 years later." Harper's voice dropped. "I didn't ask to feel this conflicted. Welcome to my life." They sat in silence after that. The gate agent made another announcement, something about new seat assignments for standby passengers. No one moved. Micah had curled into Rebecca's side and fallen asleep again, his arm wrapped protectively around his lion. Harper couldn't stop watching him, the soft expression on his face, the trust, the quiet. She reached slowly into her bag and pulled out her work tablet. For a moment she stared at the login screen, thumb hovering. Then she entered her passcode and opened the investigation dashboard. Rebecca didn't watch, but she knew. She could feel it, the weight of being measured. Why do you stay in it? Harper asked suddenly, eyes still locked on the screen. After everything? You could have walked away from all of it. Let someone else deal with Deshawn's mess. Let Micah end up in the system like so many others do. Rebecca blinked slowly, then answered, Because I saw what happened to the kids no one claimed. Her voice stayed steady, but Harper heard the grief sitting underneath it. I saw what it did to them. The way they stopped looking people in the eye. The way they stopped asking for seconds. You know what it's like to feed a child who doesn't believe they'll eat again tomorrow. Harper swallowed hard. I couldn't fix the world, Rebecca continued, but I could fix one home, one kid. That's something. Harper stared down at the list of flagged transactions on her screen. She tapped through them, examining timestamps and origin servers. Most pointed to systems Deshawn had coded. Others came after his death. But they traced back to mirrored access tokens. It hadn't been Rebecca. It had been someone who replicated his credentials before the crash. Someone who let her take the fall. She switched to the Communications tab. There, buried in a pile of audit notes, was something she hadn't seen before. An error flag marked with an IP mismatch on a transfer to Blue Hawk's dummy account. The timestamp was from 3 weeks after Deshawn's death. The login listed Rebecca's credentials, but the location showed a data center in Ohio. Rebecca had never been to Ohio. Harper looked up slowly, lips parted. You were set up, she said, voice nearly inaudible. Rebecca's expression didn't change. That's not news to me, just news to you. Harper exhaled shakily. I can clear your name. Not all at once. Not overnight. But if I submit this now... Rebecca interrupted, voice sharp. That doesn't mean they'll stop watching me. Harper nodded once, slowly. But it means they'll have to shift the lens. Micah stirred, murmured something unintelligible, then settled again. I don't need them to like me, Rebecca said after a moment, but I need them off my back. I need to work. I need to raise him without watching every car that parks across the street. Harper stared at the screen again. You'll probably get a call, questions, a formal statement request. Rebecca didn't flinch. I'll answer them. Just don't come for me in the middle of dinner next time. That made Harper laugh, just a soft one, but it cracked the weight in her chest like a window opened after too long in the dark. I don't know how to explain this to my supervisor, she said. You don't, Rebecca replied. You explain it to yourself. Harper thought about that. She thought about the way she used to believe people fell neatly into categories, suspect or source, guilty or clean. She'd been trained to stay detached, trained to lean on facts. But here she was, leaning instead on her instincts. And those instincts said this woman was many things, tired, protective, scarred, but she was not a thief. She looked up. I can walk you to your gate. Rebecca gave her a side glance. You can barely walk yourself. Harper shrugged. I'll manage. They moved as a small unit, Micah, now awake again, holding Rebecca's hand with one and dragging his small backpack with the other. Harper followed close, her tablet tucked under her arm, the case closed. She'd send the report once they were on the plane. Let the system wake up to the truth instead of chasing its own shadow. Near gate C7, they stopped. This is us, Rebecca said. Harper nodded. I'll stay behind a while. My flight's not till later. Rebecca met her eyes. You sure? I am now. There was a long pause. Then Micah stepped forward and gave Harper the line again. Keep him until you feel better, he said. Harper crouched slowly, took the toy and looked the boy square in the eye. I think I'm already on the mend. Rebecca smiled. Take care of yourself, Harper said. You too, Rebecca replied. And with that, Rebecca and Micah walked toward the boarding line, mother and child disappearing into the crowd of passengers and overhead luggage bins and gate numbers. Harper stood behind, still holding the stuffed lion, still thinking about what it meant to do the right thing, especially when it was the hardest thing to do. The plane touched down in Oakland just after noon, sunlight pushing through the windows in soft bands of gold. Rebecca kept her eyes on Micah, who clutched her hand tight as the wheels bumped against the runway. He didn't ask questions. He hadn't all morning. Not about Harper, not about the men at the airport, not about why Rebecca's silence was heavier than usual. He was smart like that. Always had been. He let her speak when she was ready, and until then, he stayed close. Steady. They walked through the terminal slowly, like people relearning how to move through a world that had shifted just slightly overnight. Everything looked the same, but something inside her had changed. She wasn't sure what part. Maybe the part that stopped waiting for the knock on the door, or maybe the part that finally believed someone might actually knock and offer help, not harm. Outside, a warm breeze greeted them. The sky was soft and clear, the storm far behind now. Rebecca hailed a rideshare, buckled Micah in the back seat, and leaned her head against the window. She closed her eyes, just for a minute. At home, the apartment smelled like cinnamon and laundry. Rebecca unlocked the door, dropped the bags by the entryway, and slipped off her shoes like she always did. Micah ran straight for the couch and turned on the little fan that buzzed faintly in the corner. "Can I have cereal?" he asked. "You can have whatever you want," she said, pulling open the fridge and realizing it was nearly empty. She turned to him. "Scratch that. We'll go shopping later." He gave a thumbs up and disappeared into his bedroom, already digging through his collection of bent comic books and loose Lego bricks. Rebecca smiled, despite the ache in her back, despite the weight of the past 24 hours pressing on her like fog. Her phone buzzed. And no number. She stared at it a moment before answering. "Hello?" There was a pause, then Harper's voice. "Hey, you made it back okay?" Rebecca nodded, though Harper couldn't see it. "Yeah, we're home. I sent in the report," Harper said. "Flagged the mismatched IPs, included the access token data. It'll take time to unravel, but they'll see what I saw. They'll have to." Rebecca leaned against the wall. "Thank you." Harper's voice was soft now. "You shouldn't have been dragged into this." Rebecca didn't respond. She didn't need to. "I also recommended they clear your name officially," Harper added. "You might get a call. Don't worry, no threats, no charges, just protocol." Rebecca closed her eyes. "That's enough." They stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then Harper said, "I haven't stopped thinking about that night." "Not the case, you." Rebecca waited. "I used to believe people were puzzles," Harper continued. "If I had enough pieces, I could know everything about them. That's not true. Sometimes people don't fit into the boxes we build for them." Rebecca smiled. "Welcome to the rest of us." "I think I was chasing control," Harper said, pretending it meant clarity. "What you found was something better," Rebecca said. "Truth." Harper exhaled slowly. "I sent you something. Check your email later." "And should I be worried?" "No," Harper said, a small smile in her voice. "You should feel proud." Rebecca hung up a few minutes later and went to her laptop. She opened her inbox and saw the message waiting, marked with Harper's initials. Inside was a scanned letter, official-looking with seals and signatures. A formal statement of non-involvement in the Blue Hawk incident. Her name cleared, her record intact. But it was the second attachment that made her pause. A recommendation form, not for the government. For a scholarship fund. Harper had nominated Micah. He wouldn't need it yet, not for years. But it was there. A note included said, "He deserves every door to stay open. Consider this one of many." Rebecca pressed her hand to her mouth, blinking back a sudden wave of heat in her eyes. That afternoon, she and Micah walked to the corner store. She let him pick out whatever cereal he wanted, even the bright, sugary one she usually said no to. They bought apples and milk, too, and walked back, slow, his small hand in hers. "We okay now?" he asked as they reached their building. "Yeah," she said softly. "We're okay. Is the lady with the badge going to visit?" Rebecca thought about it. "Maybe. Would that be okay with you?" Micah shrugged. She was nice. She was, Rebecca agreed. And somehow, that made everything easier. Over the next few weeks, things began to shift. A letter came from the Oversight Department, officially exonerated. No pending investigations, no watch flags. Her workplace received notice too. Her supervisor called to apologize for the sudden leave, for the audits, for the quiet stares people thought she hadn't noticed. They offered her job back plus a small raise. She didn't say yes right away. But she didn't say no. Then, one Saturday, the buzzer rang. Micah answered first. "Mom, it's the lady." Harper stood at the door in jeans and a navy sweater, holding a small bag of groceries. She looked different, healthier, lighter. Her smile wasn't forced now. "Thought I'd bring something over," she said. "Micah said cereal wasn't cutting it." Rebecca stepped aside, letting her in. "You're lucky he didn't eat the box." Harper knelt to greet him. "Hey, little man, I owe you something." "Hmm? Hmm?" He tilted his head. "What?" She pulled Leroy the Lion from the bag, newly stitched, with a second button eye and a bright red ribbon tied around his neck. "He needed surgery. I did my best." Micah's grin nearly split his face. "He looks awesome." Rebecca watched them, arms crossed loosely. She hadn't known what this would be, what they could be. Harper stood and met her eyes. "You're not what I expected." "You were never supposed to find me," Rebecca replied, "but I'm glad you did." They sat on the couch later, sharing coffee, with Micah dozing nearby, the sun warm on his feet. "I'm not sure what's next," Harper admitted. "For me, I might leave the agency." Rebecca looked over. "You thinking of becoming a grocery fairy?" Harper chuckled. "I don't know, I just want to do something where trust isn't treated like evidence." Rebecca raised her cup to that. They clinked mugs. Outside, the breeze blew soft against the windows. Oakland moved in its usual rhythm. Cars honking faintly, dogs barking in the distance, neighbors greeting one another with tired smiles and familiar waves. Inside the apartment, it was quiet. And for the first time in a long time, Rebecca Wahlberg believed in something she'd almost forgotten how to name. Peace. Not the kind that comes with silence, but the kind that comes when someone sees the truth in you and stays anyway.